Live stream setting, live stream setting, live stream. Blackjack. Ay, 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 ay. Seperti $26 yen beta container array. Saya 2 course only.
로드 오브 히어로즈.
Pie.
These work.
Wow, it looks so real.
This tutorial will guide you through this mod and explains you may have noticed the vanilla has been replaced by this and every part if you fall from it.
Okay, so go ahead and right click on this thing. There we go. So that's your spawn point now.
Oh my god, this is holy shit. I'm gonna help.
So this is where we live.
Hello again, I am Blunty, and this is a follow-up video on my latest custom build PC project called the Rec Rig Design, which do the heavy lifting, but performance and video quality for live streaming all local.
Is whether or not you set up your capture software to utilize software-based video encoding, which places the load on the CPU, or GPU-based encoding, which in this rig's case uses the hardware-based NVMe encoding built into NVIDIA's GPUs. AMD cards also have an encoder protocol, but at least with OBS you also need to install a small plugin to actually utilize it. On the CPU versus GPU front, there's a lot of bad advice out there about this issue, actually. Lots of wannabe know-it-alls on forums parroting something they read somewhere else, which in turn was regurgitated from somewhere else, and a lot of people just seem to take it on face value and repeat it. So I'm not just going to tell you what I think is best, I'm going to show you what the deal is. You can see for yourself the difference. CPU versus GPU and which one is best actually depends on what you're doing and why. There is actually no one-size-fits-all, simple, universal answer. The simplified, it depends answer unravels like this. If you're live streaming, and it doesn't matter if it's Twitch or YouTube or Facebook or whatever, chances are you're doing so at a comparatively low bitrate. That is, how much data you're encoding and sending out over the upload side of your internet connection. I'm going to have another video about bitrates and how the balance works between how much data you're sending up or able to send up versus the resolutions and frame rates you're streaming at and how it affects your visual quality. But for the purposes of the demonstrations in this video I'm using here, I'm using the most computationally challenging option of a 1080p stream at 30 and 60 frames per second. And I'm using a 5,550 kilobits per second bitrate, which is a little below the maximum allowable bitrate Twitch accepts, and it's what I personally stream at. But whatever the case, even at 1080p 60 frames per second, at the kinds of maximum bitrates that streaming services like Twitch will accept, for the best quality, cleanest looking stream, you'll want to be using CPU encoding. While the GPU encoding is far more efficient and easier on your system resources, as you can clearly see here when we put some system resource graphs side by side, one of which is CPU encoding, one of which is GPU encoding, at the low bit rates we need for streaming, the GPU encoding results in a muddier looking video. There's more compression artifacting, more detail loss. Video generated at exactly the same bitrate, at exactly the same resolution, at exactly the same frame rates, just looks worse when you're using the GPU encoding. So, if you can, for streams, I highly recommend you use the CPU encoding option. It'll be cleaner and better looking. But using the CPU encoding is not always a practical option though. Sometimes, especially when you're asking the same PC you're streaming from to also run a demanding game, sometimes it's best to just take the hit on the loss of quality and go for the GPU encoder. That way your game can have more CPU time and your streaming software doesn't have to share it, because doing so can severely harm both your in-game performance and cause stuttering and frame rate drops in your stream. This is especially important to keep in mind on the lower end CPUs like the Ryzen 3 in this particular rig. Builds with much more powerful, higher end CPUs will have enough room for video encoding and in the game without much worry. So experiment and see what works best for you on your machine. You can test this by setting OBS to record locally using the stream encoder. That way, when you rewatch the video you just recorded, you can see exactly what your viewers see, so you can do all your testing without having to actually go live on Twitch or whatever with a bunch of annoying little test streams. When you're dealing with local for 1080p gameplay, recording at 60 frames per second, I'd recommend between 30 and 50 megabits per second bitrate. Going higher doesn't really get you much more quality benefit, but it will heat up your hard drive much faster and put much more.
Have you guys ever had the issue to where you're attempting to stream a PC video game, but you notice your GPU's maxing out, but the game you're playing isn't lagging, but on the stream it is? Well, I've had the issue a lot, and I actually found a solution to it that I think will help all of you. On a Streamlabs OBS, it's just choppy. Skipping frames, my OBS is telling me I'm skipping frames. It just isn't good. You can tell it's obviously lagging, even though when I'm playing it physically, it doesn't feel like that. It's just on the stream for other people to watch, it looks horrible. It doesn't look good. So that's the first example I have. When I was streaming on Streamlabs OBS for that video, my GPU was maxing out. It was at 100%, almost 90 to 100% of that entire ground war game I was playing. It was really tough. My computer was struggling. Administrative mode, I guess it maxes out the CPU usage that it's gonna provide. That makes sense. OBS Studio. This is my stream. I downloaded it. This is on OBS Studio in administrative rate, and I'm excited now because now I can produce content for YouTube using Twitter. I can tell the difference. It felt smoother on my end, and obviously the stream's end. It was fantastic. I promise you.
Hey guys, what is going on? It's Havoc. Not a fan of introductions. They always